consume the API from frontend. So I just created an Angular project which is going to be used to consume our API for the ingredient. So let's start the backend first. And okay, so everything is good. So localhost 8080, and the Angular project I had already created, and it's not in the scope of this training. So if you are interested, you can go to the Angular's website and install the Node.js npm and Angular CLI. After that, you can go to IntelliJ and create an Angular CLI project. Okay, put the name and choose the node and the Angular version, and then create. Okay, so you're gonna create an Angular project, and it will automatically populate the execution setup here. And also I put some basic components in the Angular code, so that let's just start it. We run this Angular server for the development. We have a dashboard, we have an ingredient list. So far we have those two elements, components. So the UI is pretty simple. We have just only one list in the home page, and then click on this link, and we will see an ingredient list here. Okay, so the flow is like this, and this is a consumer of our API. So it means that the ingredient list, once we land on this ingredient list page, we should be able to see a list of ingredients. Okay, and by calling our backend API. Okay, so here, which is running on localhost 8080. If you look at Angular code, it's running on 4200, which is a web server. It's serving the website, web pages. Okay, so even the Angular code is using TypeScript, but it's very similar to Java. So we also can take a small look at it. Okay, so this is the component will be used to handle this ingredient list component. Okay, and we have a constructor here. We have a dependency injection. It injects a service. Okay, so to this class, and we also have a initializer. Okay, so it's the init method interface. Okay, will automatically run this method after the component is created. So here we call the service and get all ingredient method, and then we put this ingredient result into the current result here, and we display it on the page. Okay, so this is our HTML tag, and it will just have a loop to traverse. Okay, so this is the for loop to traverse through all the element in the ingredient list, getting from the backend. Okay, so this is the front end code, and this is the service. Okay, we're talking about the service will get all the data need to be displayed and set it to the component, and then use the template to display it out. Okay, so this is the front end logic. The service here is using a HTTP client, which is by default used by Angular, and this HTTP client will use various different kind of method like a get, put, patch, delete, post, right? So it depends on the HTTP method you want to choose. Then we put a URL, and then we have options like headers. Okay, also we can just customize the request and the parameters if you have any. So then put it here, and then this class, okay, so will automatically send the HTTP request to our backend. Okay, so this is our backend URL. And after the backend returns, then this will convert the JSON object into the TypeScript object. Okay, so that is automatically done. So, but the code now is not working. You can see it's not getting anything, because if we look at the console, okay, it tells us that access to the localhost 8080/ingredient API. Okay, so which is the API in our backend RESTful API. Okay, in the controller here. Okay, so this is the one we talked about before, like /ingredient, right? So there is a get method. It returns all the ingredients. It said that from the origin, localhost 4200 has been blocked by CORS policy. Okay, so this is a security constraint or security challenge brought by the browser. So if we are sending a request other than the domain or we call it origin from the existing current page, then the browser will firstly check with the backend server saying that, hey, there's a user sending a request from 4200 and try to visit your backend. Okay, so that's just like a security approach by the browser to protect the backend and also protect the user. So in order to bypass this, we need to add a new annotation in our backend. Okay, so it's called the cross origin. Okay, and here we just need to indicate like which server we want the user to cross origin. Okay, so like now if the request is sending from the origin of 4200, okay, so then we should be allow it. Okay, so if you want, you can just change it to everything. Okay, so use a wildcard here, asterisk. So then this will allow all the cross origin request. Okay, so for now, and we need to restart the backend. Okay, restart the backend, allow the browser to send the request from the origin 4200 to localhost 8080. All right, so after the backend is restarted, and we don't have to restart the front end. Okay, just refresh the page, and now you can see we get all the requests. Okay, and sorry, not got history. I got all the ingredients. If you look at the network, okay, so let's refresh again. Okay, you can see there is a get request. Okay, so localhost 4200 ingredient, and then the response. Okay, oops, sorry. So this is the Angular's code. Okay, and we have another ingredient here. Okay, so this is the one that we send to localhost 8080. Okay, ingredient. So the first one, okay, localhost 4200 is the request we send from our browser to the Angular server. Angular will return back a page, right? And then on this page, the Angular code will again send a request to localhost 8080, which is our backend server, and it will get the data, right, in the JSON format and then display it out like this. Okay, so you can see this now. The front end is working independently from the backend. So even though our backend is shut down, we can still load the page. But the thing is, the data on the page won't be displayed because the front end cannot get the necessary data from the backend. Okay, so this is also called front end back end separation architecture. So it means that we can deploy our front end in a separate server and deploy our back end in a different server. So the front end just need the data directly from the backend. It doesn't need anything related to the UI or to the page, because the page, the pictures, the layout, right, font and look and feel, all those JavaScript animation, those are all in the front end. Okay, so in the backend, just provide API, provide the data to the front end. Okay, so this is the separation part of the front and the back end. And also, just to keep this in mind, the cross origin, it only happens on front end. Okay, so just like for the website, the browser has a cross origin issue, because previously if we use Postman, we don't have such issue, because Postman is just not a browser. It doesn't check it doesn't have origin, to be honest. So browser has cross issue. Postman or other third-party languages or other third-party servers, okay, so those servers call the API, then there are going to be no CORS issue. Okay, all right, so that's it. Thanks.